I knew we had made a mistake when I saw our footprints in the snow, walking toward us. We'd driven into the mountains for one last winter trip before spring. The snow was melting, but in the shade of the trees it still lay in dirty, frozen patches. The forest felt wet, cold, and almost abandoned. We started near Estes Park at a trail leading into Rocky Mountain National Park. It was just me, my friend Mark, and his younger sister, Lena. The plan was simple: hike to an overlook, camp overnight, head back in the morning. The first few hours were perfect. Water dripped from branches, clouds rolled low over the peaks, and the forest smelled like thawing earth. That's when Mark noticed the side trail. It cut off to the right, disappearing between thick pines. No sign, no marker, but the path looked real. Packed snow, faint footprints, a clear opening. I checked the map. There was nothing there. "Maybe an old service trail," Mark said. "We'll check it out for a few minutes." That was our first mistake. 10 minutes in, the forest grew denser. 5 minutes later, the wind vanished. 5 minutes after that, we realized we couldn't hear anything at all. No birds, no branches, not even our own footsteps. Snow covered the ground in a thin white sheet, and there were tracks, not ours. They ran alongside the trail, sometimes crossing it, sometimes vanishing into the trees. Wide, deep, uneven. Like something heavy had walked here, but wasn't quite used to walking on two legs. I said we should turn back. But when we looked behind us, the trail was gone. There were only trees, wet trunks, endless shadows. Lena was the first to say she didn't like this place. That's when I looked down at the snow near our feet. Our footprints led behind us, but beside them were fresh ones, coming toward us, as if someone had followed our route from the other direction. We decided to head downhill, hoping to hit water or a road. After about 20 minutes, the trees opened into a clearing, and in the center stood an old wooden watchtower, the kind forest rangers used decades ago. It looked abandoned: blackened wood, crooked steps, ice hanging from the rails. But the door at the base stood slightly open. Inside, it was dry. There was a table, a chair, a rusted stove, and a logbook. Dusty, but not forgotten. The last entry had been written the day before. We exchanged looks. I opened the page. "If you find this tower, don't stay after dark. They come when the forest goes quiet." Lena whispered that she heard something outside. We froze. At first, it sounded like melting snow dripping from branches. Then it became clear. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, crunching through wet snow. They circled the tower, once, twice, again, like something was studying us. Mark switched off the flashlight. Darkness filled the room like smoke. The footsteps stopped at the door. A knock. 1, 2, 3. Lena grabbed my arm, and then we heard a voice outside. My voice. "Guys, open up. I found the trail. We're good." My chest locked, because I was standing right there with them, silent. "Seriously, it's freezing. Let me in." It sounded perfect. Every tone, every breath, exactly like me. Like someone outside was wearing my voice and waiting for the door to open. We didn't answer, not for a minute, not for 5. Eventually, the footsteps started again, slowly moving away. The crunching faded into the trees. We didn't sleep. At dawn, we stepped outside. The forest looked normal again. Birds calling, light on the snow. But around the tower were tracks, deep circles surrounding the clearing, and one set of prints leading straight to the door, stopping there, as if something had stood outside all night. Within an hour, we found the main trail. It had been less than 10 minutes away. When we reached the ranger station, I asked about the tower. The ranger frowned. He said the old fire watch tower in that sector had burned down years ago, nothing left but a clearing. He even showed us an old photo. It was the same spot, same clearing, but empty. No tower, no trail, no path at all. Since then, I never leave marked routes. Because if you find a trail in the mountains that isn't on the map, it might not be a trail. It might be an invitation. I knew something was wrong when our radio picked up the voice of a man who had been missing for over a year. We were hiking in the mountains of Washington State at the end of winter. Snow still covered the higher ground, but the lower forest had turned into wet mud and fog. We started near the southern entrance of Mount Rainier National Park, about 2 hours from Seattle. It was just the three of us, me, Tom, and Ryan. We'd been doing trips like this every year, but this time we wanted to push deeper into an older section of forest where ranger stations used to operate decades ago. Locals had warned us that late winter wasn't a great time to be out there. Too slippery, too empty, too quiet. That only made it more appealing. The first day was uneventful. Low clouds drifted through the trees, snow cracked under our boots, and the mountains looked cold and distant. By evening, we found a place to camp, an old clearing with what looked like the remains of a foundation. Maybe a service cabin once stood there. Ryan said our handheld radio was getting signal. We brought it mostly out of habit. Sometimes you could pick up ranger chatter or weather updates. After dark, the temperature dropped fast. The forest went silent in that heavy winter way where snow seems to swallow every sound. We were sitting by the fire when the radio suddenly hissed. At first it was just static. Then a voice broke through. If anyone can hear me, I lost the trail. We froze. The voice was male, strained, like someone talking in the cold. I see a light in the trees, but it never gets closer. Ryan grabbed the radio. This is a civilian group. State your location. The reply came almost instantly. I'm at the old station. Tower's gone. They're walking around me. We exchanged looks. Because the old ranger station in that sector had been abandoned years ago. Ryan asked for a name. Static cracked. Then the voice answered. James Carter, Forest Inspector. Tom turned to me slowly. We both recognized it. Before the trip, I'd read about him on a hiking forum. A ranger who disappeared here the previous winter. Search teams spent a week looking. They found only his pack. The radio came alive again. They don't want me to leave. If you hear this, don't follow the light. Then silence. None of us spoke. Tom said it had to be some kind of prank. Ryan was already studying the map. He said the old station should be maybe 1.5 miles uphill. I said we should stay put. That's when the radio clicked again. This time the voice sounded closer. Much closer. I can see your fire. A chill ran through me. because beyond the flames, there was only darkness. No one could see us from far away. We killed the fire. The radio fell silent. For a while, nothing happened. Then we heard footsteps in the forest. Wet snow compressing under boots. Someone moving between the trees. One set, then another, then a third. They didn't speak, they just walked slowly around our camp. We didn't turn on lights, didn't move. The radio whispered again. This time the voice sounded calm. "Thank you for coming. Now you hear them too." I shut the radio off. The footsteps continued for maybe 10 minutes. Then they stopped. We didn't sleep that night. At first light, we decided to check the station. The climb took nearly 2 hours through slush and fog. When we reached the ridge, we found it. The remains of the old watchtower. Charred beams, rusty metal, a faded warning sign, and beside it, a wooden cross. Carved into it was a name. James Carter. Date missing. Exactly 1 year earlier. We stood there in silence until Ryan suddenly spoke. "Guys, is the radio on?" It was in his pack, switched off. But from inside it came a faint whisper. Several voices, overlapping. And among them, the same voice we'd heard all night. "You hear us now. Stay. No one gets lost here." We left the mountain that same day. No stops, no talking. When we reached the car, I turned the radio on again. Nothing. No signal. No frequencies. No static. Like it had never worked at all. Since then, I don't bring radios into the mountains. And I don't hike in late winter anymore. Because if you hear the voice of someone who never came back, they might not be trying to escape. They might be trying to make sure you stay. I knew something was wrong when I saw footprints ahead of me. It had snowed overnight, and I knew for a fact I was the first person on that trail that morning. But the tracks were already there, and they were heading uphill toward the part of the mountain where the map just ends. At the end of March, I went hiking in the mountains of Washington, not far from Mount Rainier. There's still snow that time of year, but the sun is warmer, and most tourists haven't shown up yet. I like hikes like that. Cold, a little wet, but quiet. No crowds, no music blasting from speakers, just trees and wind. The trail was officially open, but the parking lot was empty. Only my car. I started hiking around 9 a.m. The air was sharp and clean, the snow fresh, the sky clear. The first 2 hours were perfect. A steady incline, thick forest, and a kind of silence so deep you could hear snow sliding off branches. That's when I saw them. Footprints. Fresh, sharp edges. Someone had passed through maybe 30 minutes earlier. I crouched down to look closer. Big steps. Adult-sized boots. Definitely hiking gear. Nothing strange, except I knew I had been the first one there. I had checked the trail log at the parking area. No entries that morning. I told myself someone probably skipped the logbook. People do that. But about 20 minutes later, things got weird. The footprints started changing. At first, they got deeper, like whoever made them suddenly weighed more. Then wider, like they were walking with their legs spread unnaturally far apart. And then, after another stretch, they just stopped. Right in the middle of the trail. No turn, no side tracks, no prints heading back. It looked like the person had simply vanished. I stood there for a minute, maybe two. That's when I heard it. A crunch, somewhere in the forest to my right. I figured it was a deer, but the sound was slow, heavy, careful, like something moving in a way meant not to be heard. I called out, "Hey, you on the trail?" Silence. Then the crunch again, but this time behind me. I spun around. Nothing. But I noticed something new. There were fresh footprints on the trail behind me now, heading straight toward where I stood. I knew they hadn't been there a minute earlier. My heart started pounding. Maybe someone was just catching up to me. I pretended everything was normal and kept walking. But every few minutes, I glanced back. Each time the prints were closer, like whoever was behind me was moving faster than I was. That's when I did something I hadn't planned. I stepped off the trail on purpose. I walked about 20 meters into the trees and stood still behind a cluster of trunks. Silent. 30 seconds passed. Then I heard footsteps on the trail. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They stopped directly across from where I was hiding. I couldn't see anyone, but I could hear them breathing. They just stood there, not moving, like they knew I was nearby. A minute passed, maybe more. Then the steps started again, but this time they went downhill, toward the parking lot. I stayed frozen for another 5 minutes before stepping back onto the trail. The footprints were still there. They led downhill, and beside them was another set. The same large prints I'd seen earlier, now moving together, like there were two of them. That's when I decided I wasn't going any higher. I turned around and headed back down, and the whole way I had this feeling like something in the forest was watching me. When I reached the parking lot, my car was still the only one there, but in the snow beside it, there were tracks. 2 sets. They started at the edge of the woods and stopped right behind my trunk, like someone had stood there, watching me come down. I got in the car fast, started the engine, and drove off. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror, and for just a second, I thought I saw 2 figures standing between the trees, and one of them was much taller than a person should be. I still go hiking, but since that day, I never take a trail if I know I'm supposed to be the first one on it. Because sometimes, you're not first, and you're definitely not alone.